Word. Okay. Okay, so we are going to just do a kind of a quick update or really just take another quick look at the maps since the last call. I have a little bit more kind of, we can talk a little bit more in depth about the electoral maps that we have. And then we'll take a look at kind of what we see coming up, kind of going forward, and how we're thinking about this next phase of fighting for fair maps in North Carolina. And we'll also just kind of talk a little bit about the primary election that's coming up. And then I want to have just an opportunity for folks on this call who have anything that you want to share about work you're doing or ways that folks can engage in with other organizations in the state. I know there's some folks on this call who do a lot of work with other organizations. So I wanted to just have sort of an open forum, and if anyone has anything you'd like to share, you'll be invited to do that. So we'd love to have folks, y'all introduce yourselves in the chat, just so we all know who's in the space with us. Your name, your if you are part of another organization that you want to lift up into the chat. And your name, your pronouns, where you're joining from, which part of the state, or if it's outside of North Carolina, where you're joining us from, and then the organizational affiliations if you'd like. Just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded, and if you have questions, you're welcome to, it's a smaller group today, you're welcome to just unmute or put your questions in the chat, and Amelia will help me keep an eye on the chat and just interrupt me, Amelia, because everyone knows I can't do the more than one thing at a time. So
you got it, dude.
Okay, thank you. If I try to keep an eye on the chat, I get all over the place. Okay, so we're just gonna jump in now. Thanks, y'all. I see the folks adding introductions into the chat. Appreciate that. We wanted to just kind of take another look at the maps. I'm sure that a lot of y'all have had a chance at this point to look at the maps, see what your new districts are. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. So the maps that I'm going to show you now are our maps that are just sort of showing the different districts. But I did want to, I know a lot of folks are interested in sort of like the partisan lean of various districts. So if you are curious about that, the link that I just dropped in the chat is for the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. And I'll actually show you that just kind of with you real quick before we move on. It's a really good resource if you're interested in seeing kind of which districts are, Democratic leaning, Republican leaning, or competitive. So this is the link I put in the chat. And if you click on North Carolina, or if you're interested in a different state, you can do the same. And then over here on the left, so I just clicked on North Carolina, and then over here on the left, it's got links to the final maps. So if I click on, for example, the congressional map, first it'll give you, the grade, but then over here is where it shows you the interactive map with the kind of color coding that lets you see the partisan lean of districts. I know a lot of us are interested in that. So you can see here rolling over the district, it tells you the Democratic vote share in previous elections, Republican vote share, and the BVAP is the Black voting age population of the district. So you can see in our congressional map, our current congressional map, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Democrat leaning seats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Republican leaning seats, and then this one in the middle, this light blue one, is the most competitive district that we have. And I think a lot of folks also consider this District 1 pretty competitive as well for this congressional map. So that's that map. If you're interested, you can also look at the state legislative maps as well. And they're a little harder to see on the big screen like this, but you can zoom in and look at your district and kind of get a sense of that. So I'm going to go back to my slide. Are there any questions about any of that? I should stop and
Can you send that to us tomorrow, Bree? Can you email us that link also?
yeah, I will. The email probably will go out Monday, just a full disclosure. But yes, I will send an email on Monday with all this information and the link to the recording.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this is the congressional map. I just find this with these colors a little bit easier to kind of see the different districts. The Republican districts are the Republican leaning districts are 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. The Democratic leaning districts are 2, 4, 6, 12, 14, and the toss-ups are 1 and 13. And this is the map that was drawn by the special masters. And
can you just say that one more time? Say that one more time.
The numbers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the Republican districts are 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And those are just lean, right? Those are the Republican leaning districts. Those are, I think most folks consider those pretty safe Republican districts. The Democratic leaning districts are 2, 4, 6, 12, and 14. And then the toss-up districts are 1 and 13. And both of the toss-up districts, so 1 and 13, 1 is the district where GK Butterfield is retiring. So that's an open seat. He would be the incumbent, but he's not running. So that's an open seat. And then 13 is basically the new district. That's kind of the district that really didn't exist in any iteration prior to this year. So that is a new district, and there is no incumbent in that district. So that's a very close. It's a very competitive seat.
And how does that differ from the former one in terms of the numbers? Leaning this and leaning that.
So you mean the former one, meaning like the map that we have now, or
Oh,
I thought before.
I thought there had been one before the redistricting, and that this is the one that the judges settled on and sort of final, or maybe I'm mixed up about that.
So it's just it sounds probably that you're mixed up. It's that it's a little bit of a complicated question because in North Carolina we have like a new district, every cycle, basically a new map. So the map that was the most recent map prior to this one that was actually like enacted and voted on was an 8-5 map. So there were 13 districts, and there were 5 Democrats and 8 Republican seats in that map. The map but there was a map that was passed by the legislature that was a 10-4 or an 11-3 map that was struck down in this cycle. So this cycle, the map that the legislature drew most folks agreed it was like a 10 Republican seat, 4 Democratic seat map. And then there was another one that they drew that was also not accepted, that would have been more competitive, but either of those actually we didn't run an election with either of those because that just happened. This is the map that after those congressional maps were struck down by the courts, the court appointed special masters to draw the map, and this is the map that we got from that. Does that answer the question?
That's very helpful. The only part I still have, is this the final accepted, or is it still being combated?
This is the final accepted map for 2022, but they called it an intermediary map. So it is likely that this map will be redrawn. They're going to give the legislature another. The legislature could redraw it basically after this election, but this will be the map for the 2022 election.
Bree?
Yes.
In Wake County, I noticed that it's in two sections now, and I didn't pay much attention to that earlier. I'm from the Raleigh area originally. Is the way Wake County is split a good or a bad as far as you can see?
I mean, I hesitate to make like a sort of black and white analysis like that.
Sure,
I
sure.
think that what I would say is that the fact that Wake County is only split once is an improvement over the maps that they had proposed and passed, which split Wake County into 3 different districts.
Agreed.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's probably plenty of opportunity for conversations for people who are in Wake County, who live in the neighborhoods that are split or live in the areas where those splits occur. I think there's, I'd be interested in what folks in Wake County, how people in Wake County feel about this map and whether the way it's split makes sense. But I do think that the fact that it's only split once is a big improvement.
Right. I would see that Cary and Apex, Garner, all those areas are in the bottom or the southern portion,
Yeah.
separate from somewhere in the middle of Raleigh up north.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. And there, I think a lot of southern Wake, some of that growth carries into, Johnston County and Harnett County and also Chatham, and Chatham's a different district, but I think that there's that kind of makes sense to me, that those big growth areas are in the same district rather than being split like they were before. But I think that that's an interesting thing to think about and talk about, especially considering that like this map is likely to be redrawn after this year. So thinking about what does make sense for Wake County, because similarly to Mecklenburg County, because of the population size, it does have to be split. It's too big to be just one congressional district.
Right. And how does that new district lean?
That 13.
I guess that's it. I can't see it.
The green one. So that is 13, and it is a very partisanly even district. It is, I have to look at the other map, but it's very close. It's a toss-up district.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Chuck, I see your hand up.
Well, actually, you actually answered my question, or not question. I was going to make a remark that this map is perishable. It's only good for about a year, and it's highly likely that it will be challenged, and we'll have to end up having to redraw it again, which is part of the reason that the Supreme Court races are so important. And we have 2 incumbents who are both Democrat, and so we have everything to lose, and we have a lot to lose, and the Republicans have none. And the other issue was, the reason we've got 13, we've got a new district is because of the census.
Of course.
Right, the 14. So there are 14 districts now, and that's right. That we got an extra, an additional district because of our population growth, and yeah.
And
I think
there's 14. I don't. Oh, I do see 14. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 14 now. Yeah. And I do think that this map makes more sense than the previous maps that the legislature passed in that regard as well, because where that growth is most is in Mecklenburg and Wake. And so, especially this like 13, that a lot of that area is where a lot of growth. Johnston County, I think, is like the fastest growing county in the state. So that in that way, it also makes a little bit more sense, I think. Was there, John, did you have a question?
I did have a question, but Chuck made the very point that I wanted to make. So
Yeah.
I won't bore you.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep moving, but I think that, yeah, that is just something I'm glad that y'all raised. And we'll get to this as when we talk a little bit later about just how we're thinking about moving forward, because one of the things that's obviously coming up for this work is that this map will likely be redrawn next year. And yeah, it's really exhausting to think about. We're going to run this election, we're going to have new people elected, and then, they're going to try to change it. But that's the reality. That's what we got. So let's see.
Excuse me, but in what years is the Supreme Court 2 seats up for re-election? Is that in 2022 or is that?
So
Well,
yep. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but that is, yeah, the Supreme Court, there are 2 seats up for re-election or for election this year. And then there will be more.
And they're both Democratic seats now. So
Both,
we
yeah, both
lose
of the
either
folks
one
that
of
are-
those, and some of the Democrats no longer have a majority on the Supreme Court. So we will be back in gerrymander hell if that happens.
Yeah. So we'll just quickly, this is the Senate map. There are, the analysis that I've seen again from that, the Princeton Gerrymandering Project, there are 18 likely Democratic seats, 4 likely toss-ups, and 28 likely Republican seats. I think that I've got that right. And then so the competitive seats here, the toss-ups are 3, which is this district over here in northeastern North Carolina. 7 down in New Hanover County, 17, which is in southern Wake County, 18, which is in northern Wake and Granville. And then there's a seat 42 in South Meck that's also pretty competitive. And then
that's for what? That's for what? I missed what you said that was for.
That's for the Senate, the North Carolina
The Senate.
Senate.
Right.
So this is still a pretty gerrymandered map. And we, I don't know what's going to happen with this map. It is a final map. It was in that the courts did not, they accepted it for this election. They declined to stay this election under this map, but that doesn't mean that this map could not still be litigated. And it is clearly still a pretty gerrymandered map. Much more, a much better map for Republicans than Democrats. And this is the House map. There are 46 safe or lean Democratic seats, 8 toss-ups, and 66 safe or lean Republican seats. The toss-up seats in the House map are District 9, which is Southern Pitt County, District 24, which is Wilson County, 25, which is Nash County, 35, which is in Northern Wake, 48, which is at Scotland and Hoke counties, 63 in Northern Alamance, 73 in Cabarrus, and 103 in Southern Mecklenburg County. All right. So now I just wanted to talk a little bit about, what we see. We're still in the process, like all on the line, and also in conversations that I've been having with other partners. Everyone's sort of, still debriefing, thinking about what is the next phase, where does the work need to happen now. I do want to say a quick thank you to everyone who filled out feedback form that I shared in the last meeting and in the emails, a lot of folks filled it out and gave really helpful feedback. And I read it very carefully and using that as we're planning for the next phase, like taking your feedback on what was helpful, what was not so helpful, and what feels important to people here and people who filled out the feedback form about, the work that comes next is incredibly helpful for me thinking through, what we're going to do this year and beyond. So I appreciate everyone who took the time to do that. This is an example of my graphic design skills, which are lacking. But I tried because everyone likes a graphic. But I wanted to share this just because I think that this is how I've started thinking about, this has come through conversations with folks, and shout out to Martha Schaefer, who's not here, but who kind of helped clarify these buckets with me. The sort of the buckets that I think we can think about going forward in the next phase for our work is education, preparation, and elections. Those are kind of the buckets that I think the work falls into. And we'll talk about each of those a little bit more. Thank you for the nice thoughts about my, it's a growth area for me, y'all. Okay, so
yes, keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it.
So
I
simple.
agree.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree. This is
Exactly.
You followed the graphic handle, KISS.
I did do that. I do know that rule. Don't do something just because you can, right? Just keep it simple. Okay. So the education piece, I think, falls into a couple of categories. One is like educating ourselves, right? So like last month we had Marco Dorado on, and we talked about, like, what can we learn from processes in other states that have different systems, that have independent commissions or whatever. I think that there's a lot that we can learn as advocates and activists about, like how we, what happened in this past cycle here, what worked for us, what didn't work for us. So we're working on that, like gathering that information, and then making sure that we share it with everyone who is interested. I think the other piece is what education do people need? What can we expand on or develop to make folks prepared, even more than we were this time, or to prepare more folks for the next thing, the next cycle, whether that's next year or in 10 years. And then the other piece of that is just thinking about, and this is basically just like sharing what's been in my brain. But how do we get that information to the people who need it, to more people and the people who need it? So that's, I think that the sort of education piece. And then all of this is obviously connected, but these are the three, kind of three-legged stool here. Preparation. So like the other big thing that I'm thinking about is like, what is the next fight? As folks have mentioned, it is probably the next big fight, the next big thing we need to be gearing up for is that redraw in 2023 that is likely to happen on the congressional map. So thinking about, what can we start doing now to be ready for that? We learned a lot from this past cycle. So how can we implement that and learn from it and be ready earlier and better and be able to engage in that next year? And then also starting to think about redistricting reform. Lots of people on this call and lots of people in North Carolina have been working on redistricting reform for a decade or more. But that is also, I think, something that people are talking about, and we can start preparing for, like, what does that look like? What are our opportunities? What are our challenges? And what can we start doing now to lay the groundwork for what's possible here in North Carolina. And then just thinking more long-term as well at the 2030 cycle of like, what can we do now to start building towards that?
Change the menu. Do you want a salad now?
Okay.
You get an onion?
Oh, and I will drop the link. Actually, I have, if anyone didn't see the March meeting, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Marco, I thought, did a great job of sharing. He's very knowledgeable about what the process looked like in states that had various iterations of commissions, independent commissions, and he went over some of that. If I saw a message from someone who's interested in connecting with Marco, if you are interested in connecting with Marco, just shoot me an email and I'll connect you. It's Brough, BROUGH @redistrictingaction.org, and that'll be in the email. Y'all have my email. You get emails from me all the time. So yeah, that was really good, and I think that is a conversation that we will definitely be continuing to have here about what that reform looks like, and there is also partners. There are partner groups that have been meeting and talking about that and coming to consensus about what they'd like to see. And so if anyone's really interested in that, also reach out to me and I can connect you with that group. There's a working group that's starting to have those conversations as well. Okay. John Lingle. Raise your hand.
This is a little bit out of left field, this question, but listening to you, I'm sitting here thinking, if the Republicans, win the Supreme Court, we will be back in redistricting hell. And if the Democrats maintain the majority, we'll probably stay about the same. The Republicans will have a little advantage because they control the legislature, but we won't be back in redistricting hell. But I was thinking here, you guys are really in trouble because you're apolitical, which is one of the things I admire and one of the reasons I keep coming back to your meetings. But this is a situation where it's almost like choosing sides is going to have terrific impact on how much redistricting happens here in North Carolina. So how do you balance your need to remain apolitical with the simple fact, if the Supreme Court changes in the state? I mean, you just got to be convinced we're going right back to the heavy, gerrymandering.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I feel about it is just, I want there to be a system of checks and balances. I think one of the arguments that the legislature is making is that they should not have anyone checking their power. And, I don't want any party to have unchecked power. So, I think it's unfortunate that our judicial elections are partisan. That is something, that was a choice that was Republicans made when they had the power to do it. They made them partisan. So I think that's unfortunate. I mean, I think it's possible that there could be a Republican justice who agrees that we should, the gerrymandering is problematic. So I don't necessarily think it's a partisan issue, but obviously the way it shakes out, it shakes out or has shaken out, there's political reality as well. And I understand what you're saying, but I think, that I think the way that, I'm thinking about it is that I want judges who believe in people's rights to have people's voting rights and the right of people to be able to vote and for their votes to matter the same, regardless of their party. So, but obviously, I mean, the thing on your screen right now is elections, so obviously elections matter, and what people who we elect believe matters. And the people that we elect, like you said, John, will, if there is a redraw, the folks who are in control of the legislature will be in charge of that process. and the the Supreme Court elections will impact, what kinds of checks and balances the courts put on gerrymandering.
The thing
So
that's
that
so
is the reality.
frustrating, the thing that's so frustrating is the polls indicate that the majority of Republicans want to get rid of this gerrymandering.
Yeah,
And that's what's so darn frustrating. That,
yeah.
regardless of what the voters think, the politicians are going to do what they're going to do. And,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
John, I would love
frustrating.
I would love for you to like think about, if there's ways to, I mean, I know that you do a lot of outreach and work, and I mean, it sure seems to me like that this should be an issue, and the polls do bear out that, voters across the political spectrum do not like gerrymandering, and I think that honestly, people who would probably have the most voice would be Republican voters with Republican representatives going to them and saying, stop doing this. But that's another
Yeah.
conversation, I think.
I'm not sure they listen to their own voters.
Well-
It's like, what can I do to stay in office? That's the only thing that seems to be there.
Yeah,
And that's for both parties. That was not a political statement. That was a general statement about politics.
and it kind of goes back to why we don't really want politicians to be drawing the maps in the first place, right? It all comes back to that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you, Bree.
yep. So I just, kind of before we wrap up, just wanted to share, I know folks on this call are probably well aware of these dates, but I wanted to just make sure that we had them all in one good place. The midterms are basically happening now in North Carolina. The voter registration deadline to register to vote in the primary is tomorrow. But you can also, there is same day registration during early voting, but not on election day. So if you know someone who needs to register, they can still register if they go and vote early. Early voting will happen April 28th through May 14th. Folks have until May 10th to request an absentee ballot. And then May 17th is primary election day and the deadline to return absentee ballots.
Bree,
Yes.
just revisiting the gerrymandering for one statement.
Sure.
The way the gerrymandering held is eventually to have independent commissions handling that. That has to be the goal in the long run, because neither party wants the other one to have gerrymandering control. I mean, as Democrats, we had it for a long, long time in North Carolina.
Yep.
And so the Republicans say, well, turnabout's fair play. But the real answer, the justice in it, will be an independent commission, as a number of states already have.
Absolutely. And I debated whether to get into that in this hour, but it just felt like kind of more than we could really dig into.
Sure.
But that is something that I think will be a continuing conversation. And like, I totally agree. And I think that is also all in the lines view, is that is the gold standard. I mean, Eric Holder has said that, AG Holder has said that is the gold standard, that and we are still kind of in the process of analyzing what happened in different states, but there were really good examples of different kinds of commissions and what worked and what didn't work. So I think that that's something that, like, as we're thinking about what reform might look like here, we want to be really intentional and thoughtful and look at what actually worked and how things played out in other places. Because somewhere like Virginia, technically has a commission, but like that kind of got pretty messy. But then there were places like Michigan and Colorado where it worked really well. So
I see.
we will definitely be talking more about that in the coming months.
Thank you.
I see a few hands. So Nadine, Michelle, and then John.
I was wondering if those helpful links, if you would put them in the chat or send them to us, because I just tried clicking on them and I guess they're not live because they're on your display.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted the Ballotpedia and Board of Elections. And then secondly, yeah, I think Ohio is another state where the voters voted for the commission and then the legislature, I guess, doing everything to fight it. So it is a whole discussion.
Yeah, Ohio is a mess. Yeah, it's definitely there's a lot to unpack there for sure. Fortunately, you know, we do have some time. Michelle, and yes, Nadine, I managed to not put those links in my notes. So I will have to find them when I unshare my screen, and I'll put them in the chat, and they'll also be in the follow-up email.
Cool.
Let me take Michelle's question or comment, and then I'll also talk through what those links actually are.
Yeah, so are you guys hearing me? Because I'm just saying, okay. So the one thing I want to mention that we should spread the word about, because here in Forsyth County and Winston-Salem, there's a bunch of us that are trying to deal with the fact that all these crazy people are trying to get on the school board. And so one of the things we're doing is a lot of people are registering as unaffiliated so that they can vote in the Republican primary and vote for the moderate Republicans, and then, you know, vote whatever they want in the general. And so that's something, you know, kind of a tactic that people might want to, if you're spreading information about, like, you know, trying to get people to vote, you know, that's something that might be worth mentioning to folks. And also, I just wanted to add to the last comment. I think in Michigan, there was a lot of pushback from the Republican legislature when their really excellent commission bill went through. And, you know, it still was not without problems, even though it worked fairly well. But yeah, the Republicans were not happy that the voters voted for that. So they tried.
Yeah, and that's going to be I mean, that's going to be a huge challenge here, right? Like we don't have to, we don't have the option, like I think they do in Michigan, of putting like citizens can't just put something on the ballot. Like we can't put a ballot initiative on the ballot. The legislature has to do it. So yeah, so the legislators have to want whatever the ballot initiative is. So there's a lot. I mean, like this is something that we will certainly be unpacking and thinking through for a while, because it's different in every state, and here that is the process. And thank you, Michelle, for your point too on you know, that actually is a great segue. Your point about sharing information on the elections is a perfect segue, and I'll go ahead and share this, and then I will unshare my screen and drop those links. I wanted to just offer, you know, for folks who maybe hadn't thought about doing this yet, or and I know a lot of people on here already do this, but you know, I'm noticing in my personal network that a lot of people are kind of like checked out of politics, of elections, and just sort of like, I can't deal with it right now. Like there's a lot going on in the world. Social media is a mess. So just think about, you know, Michelle, what you said about like the school board. A lot of people don't realize too that, like, for example, in Durham, our school board elections are nonpartisan, and so the school board will be decided in the primary. And we have a similar situation where there's like a group of 5 Republicans running to try to take power on the school board, which is pretty wild in Durham, because Durham votes typically more Democratic than San Francisco. So it's pretty wild, but that's what's happening. And that's the kind of thing that I think is helpful for folks like us to just talk with our networks about, figure out the best way to do that, whether it's, you know, I like to write a Google Doc and just share that. But this is, you know, for your own personal network, or like an email that you can just share out and include those links, which I will stop sharing my screen now, so I can drop those links for y'all. I think that those links are just like helpful for people. A lot of folks don't know that, you know, that these resources even exist. hold on, let me see if I can. So that kind of thing is really helpful for people to know about, right? Like the resources for where you can check your registration. Let me drop it in the chat and then we can talk them through. Yeah, Helen, I don't know if school board races, my understanding is that school board races, at least in North Carolina, have traditionally been nonpartisan, but there has been a movement among Republicans in particular to make them partisan. And there are some places in North Carolina that they are already partisan, and that's like something that is a movement.
I think, can I speak to that for just a quick second, Bree? They are nonpartisan, and therefore all of your school board candidates will list on both the Republican ballot and the Democratic ballot. Best way to prove that to someone is go on your County Board of Elections website, and they have sample ballots for both parties. That's a great thing to be pushing out for people to see, because keep in mind, on the Democratic ballot, the US Senate race, which is the only other race on the Democratic ballot in at least my county, Sherry Beasley has several people who are running against her. She needs 30% of the vote plus one. So to the extent people are moving to unaffiliated to pull a Republican ballot, not realizing that they can actually vote for school board on either ballot, you're going to lose them in the Sherry Beasley primary. And yes, you are correct. The Republican Party is desperately trying and succeeding to make these incredibly partisan. There is a great activist group in this space in North Carolina called Red, Wine, and Blue. You can find them on Facebook. It's a group of historically suburban women, and they are pushing out phenomenal materials and information for you to push back on what the Republican leaning Board of Education individuals are saying.
Yeah, I've been looking into a bunch of that. I am in a small group of people that's been trying to like put together some materials to like push out just locally here. And they all are pretty under the impression that, at least in Forsyth County, that there are that the school board is in fact, the primaries are they are actually what am I trying to say? They're partisan. So somebody has to either be unaffiliated or be of a certain party in order to be able to vote for the Republican slate in the primary here for the school boards. I don't know if I guess I'll look into it and see if they're right, but I think that we might be one place where that actually is the case, because that's certainly what all these people who are been really into this have been saying for Forsyth County. But I agree with you, and we talked about the fact of Sherry Beasley being one reason why maybe I didn't want to do that. So I don't know if unaffiliates can, vote and have one party ballot for one thing and one party ballot for another thing. I'm not really sure how that part works, but.
Well, unaffiliated can pull either ballot for the primary.
Right, but only one and not both, or not Senate for one and school board for the other or anything like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Googling school board election for Forsyth County, and I came up with a whole handful of partisan school board elections: Allegheny, Anson, Blyden, Brunswick, Duplin, Forsyth County, Winston-Salem, Graham County, Guilford County, Greene County, Arnett County, Jones County, Lee County, Lenore County, New Hanover County, Swain County, Vance County, and let's see.
Got the idea. Yeah, so it sounds like those people that I've been talking to are correct, and that ours are that way.
Yeah.
And
But it does have the downside that if they do that, try to game the system, they wouldn't be able to vote for the congressional person that you just mentioned. So that's serious.
Who work in the school systems, and they are seriously worried about this. So they've just chosen it as their priority for now. That's where it's at, so, and I get it. I mean, they're going to have to deal with these people. And there's some scary ones. There's some really awful ones. So, you know, I get where they're coming from, but I didn't change mine. And it is a trade-off. It's sucky that we even have to think that way, honestly.
Yeah, I know there are, I appreciate Helen, you lifting up this issue, and I know that there are groups that are working in particular on school board elections, like Down Home's doing a lot of work in school board elections, and other organizations are too. And I also wanted to leave a little time for anybody on this call to, if you're part of an organization or a group, and this conversation is exactly what I was hoping for. So I just wanted to say, this is, if anyone else has any, you know, information you would like to share, or if you are a part of an org that is working, or if you are volunteering with someone or something that you want to share with the group, let's have that space as well. And while folks are thinking about that, I'll just mention the links that I dropped. I think they're probably self-explanatory if you go to them, but the last one is that Princeton Gerrymandering Project link, which I dropped earlier. I know folks that are on this call are very well aware of the North Carolina Board of Elections website, but there is a voter lookup. So you can look people that you know up and see if they're registered, and also help them find their sample ballots. That is a useful thing. And also that's just something to share with folks and make sure that they check their registration. A lot of people I feel like have moved in the past couple of years, and making sure that they've updated their registration is really important. And then Ballotpedia. So you can find your sample ballot on the Board of Elections, the voter lookup website. But the Ballotpedia, which is the top link I dropped, I think is also nice, because that links to information about the different candidates. So that's helpful, although it's hit or miss. I mean, I think it depends on whether candidates have websites and things like that that's accessible, but
Great.
for the front runners it does. So
Yeah, Ballotpedia did not have any of my local elections on it when I checked last week. And it may be because we were waiting on the redistricting and the deadline was so late, but it did not have any local elections on it.
Okay, good to know. That is something I hope that I hope that there are information and journalism folks working on that, for at least for the general, of how to get those sorts of like voter guides up online where people can learn about the candidates.
Are there like League of Women Voters that put out like panels and information kind of nonpartisanly in North Carolina?
There are like good government and democracy groups that do nonpartisan voter guides, for sure. I think Democracy NC does one, and the North Carolina Black Alliance in the past has done them. So there are, and I'll try to share that kind of information out on my newsletter as we see it.
Vote411.org is a site that the League of Women Voters has. It is nonpartisan. I personally have made it a matter of honor that if a candidate will not take the time to answer the questions that the League sends out, I will not vote for them no matter what their party is. I think it speaks very highly to how much they're going to listen to citizens after they're elected.
Rebecca, say that site again, please. What did you say that site is?
Vote411.
Vote411.org, right?
Yes.
Put it in the chat. Great. Thank you for that. That's a great resource. Anybody else have anything they want to share that they've been working on, or opportunities for folks who might want to volunteer or plug in, or just resources?
YouCanVote.org.
Yes, youcanvote.org. Thank you, Barbara. Yep. They're a great resource, and they do a great job of getting that, just the information. I feel like that is like half the battle, is just getting accurate information to people about how to make sure they're registered, and then where they go to vote and when. It's huge. So that's definitely something worth, sharing with your networks. Viola, did you have a question or a comment?
Well, it's not directly pertaining to voting, although I'd like to point out that Frank Bruni in the New York Times has a marvelous article today in the opinion section about the rights of parents. And there are few voices right now that are talking a lot about the rights of parents being really not the issue. It's a public school, and public schools, have a mission to educate citizens, and not have nothing to do, should not be about religious issues or other issues. But anyway, I recommend the article. It's, I think, the new power talk for Democratic parents to say, we're going to stand up as parents whose education for children is to create informed and able citizens. So Frank Bruni, and there are a few other ones that were there yesterday too, but this is a new issue. Anyway, I just thought people might like to find this supporting.
That's great. Thank you so
And
much.
Bree, I have something. I don't know if there's anybody on this line, but I'm working with a group that's in Monroe County, and we're trying to get voter registration going. And we also, Monroe City, and we would expand to Union County. So if there's anybody there, maybe you can, I don't know, put your name in or let Bree know to let me know or something, because if there's anyone who might want to work on helping with registering people with events that we have, like car caravans and signups and stuff like that. So my name is Nadine, and maybe you could put your name in the chat if you're in Union County or Monroe. Thanks.
Thanks, Nadine. Yeah, y'all can, I think you guys can all, you should be able to message each other, or feel free to email me if you want to be connected, offline, and I'll make sure that whoever needs to connect can connect. Chuck, did I see your hand? No, John.
Yeah, I have one more. Look, I don't know if I'm allowed to post this in your chat box, but the Democratic Party in North Carolina came out with a really useful tool that lists all the candidates on the Democratic primary, plus links to their website and to their Facebook pages, plus a thumbnail form, and I can drop that link.
That's fine, John. You can drop it.
If I'm allowed to.
Yeah, you can drop it. You can, the chats, it's fine.
But we were going to do
Sharing
this in
information.
precinct, and this, if you're thinking about doing this, you type in what your address is, and it gives you all the people that are going to be on your Democratic primary. And a lot of them have information. They're still adding information, and the people running who don't have information is because they haven't filled out the survey. So I'll drop that in the link. So if you have a candidate that doesn't have any information like his or her thumbnail or Facebook page or website, they need to go fill this survey out so the Democratic Party will put them in. So the first link I'll put in there, I just did that, is look up your candidates. And
That's great, John. Thanks for.
And the next one I'm dropping in there is the questionnaire. So if you have a favorite candidate and they're not in there anywhere, send them this questionnaire, and if they fill that out, it'll go to the Democratic Party and they'll add their thumbnail, their webpage, all that kind of stuff.
That's great. Thank you. Helen, I see your hand. I just want to, that made me think of something else I wanted to say earlier, which is that the All on the Line, our affiliate organizations will likely do some endorsements in this election for, pro fair maps candidates, as we did in past elections. So if you know a candidate of a candidate, either in your district or elsewhere, who you think that, I don't know, I don't think it will be All on the Line that will do the endorsements directly, but the National Redistricting Action Fund or someone will. But you can let me know if you know of someone that we should be aware of, that we may want to.
Hey, Bree,
Yeah.
a number of the Democrat candidates, I think Jeff Jackson's an example of one, have signed a pledge that if they're elected, they will fight for nonpartisan redistricting. So
Yeah.
that would be a possible list to start on. Actually, he's now running for the, no longer for the state, but for
Yeah.
the.
Yep. Yeah, and
congressional
we'll probably
district.
have something like that again for new candidates, but just to make sure that we, know who's out there. And I think, perhaps even at the more local level, folks who are
Right.
pro fair maps. Helen,
Okay.
I'm gonna let Helen, I see your
It's
hand.
a
Helen,
really
and then
quick
we'll close
question.
out.
Really
Yep,
quick
what's that?
question. Have you heard, I've heard that we're only 4 state legislative movements away from a constitutional convention, that we only need 4 more states to put through their legislature, that we should have a constitutional convention. Every single state that's passed that, it's a Republican legislature. North Carolina has not passed it, to my understanding. So if there were ever a reason to make sure that we don't end up with a supermajority, I would say helping to prevent a constitutional convention led solely by Republicans might be it. Maybe, Bree, that's something you could look into, because I think that's a really important piece of information. And I've heard it and I don't know how to verify that.
Yeah, great flag. I will see what I can find out about that. I feel like I've heard that in the past, but I don't know the numbers or where we are with it.
Yeah, I've heard something recently, but I don't know what the numbers were. But every time, even sometimes people say, oh, let's bring this amendment up for a convention. I said, no, you don't want a constitutional convention. We would not have any rights if it came up to this country at this point.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, we would have rights. We could have guns. That would be the right.
Well,
way
we
to do it.
already have those, we don't need another thing, another convention for that.
Actually, the Chilean have voted to redo their whole constitution, which was developed by the, actually, they used the Chicago school to create the old convention that just created tremendous wealth gaps. So they have voted first to redo that whole constitution. And they had riots in the street to get to that point. And then they all voted to not allow any current politicians to serve on the group of people that were going to redraw the Constitution. So I thought that was a pretty good double whammy. So if we do have a convention, we've got to make sure no politicians sit on it.
Can serve.
All right, y'all. Well, it is 7 and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I did just want to this information will be in the email, which, just full disclosure, will not go out tomorrow. It will go out on Monday. I've got some sick kiddos, so I'm a little behind, but on Monday's email, I will also include that the next statewide meeting is going to be May 26th, and I'll have the link in there. But just if you want to go ahead and mark your calendars for it, it'll be May 26th. It's a Thursday at 6 p.m. And I appreciate you all being here and still being with us. I think, I don't know if I said this at the top, but All on the Line is having our national, we're coming together next week for a retreat where we'll be doing planning, and so hopefully at the next meeting we'll have some more kind of concrete steps as far as going forward. So thank you all so much. Thank you for being here. It's great to see everyone.
Hey, Quick question.
Sure.
Next month's meeting going to be the same Zoom link? Because it took me a pretty good while to get to that. For some reason, it wasn't in my, reminder email.
It was in the confirmation that I got originally. So I looked in the reminder, it wasn't there. And I thought, what are they doing? Register? So you have to go back to your confirmation you got before.
It's yeah, it's tricky because of the way that we have to use Mobilize and the way that Zoom interplays with Mobilize, but it will not be the same link. It will be a new link. And when you register, you will get both a Mobilize confirmation with the link and a confirmation directly from Zoom. And you should also get a calendar invite, and the link should be in the calendar invite. But what I would say to do is just make yourself, if you don't see that, make yourself a calendar invite or calendar with the Zoom link in it.
Right, that's what's really easy. I do that all the time. They come back, they confirm I've registered, and they say, put it on your calendar. You hit a link, it goes right onto I have Google, but you can also do it to iPhone. It goes right on your calendar, and then when I click on it, the link's right there.
Well, thanks for including it in the confirmation, because I don't always like to do the extra step. So thanks for, because I was really shocked, when I looked at the most recent one and it wasn't there. I thought, oh no. And then I went back to my confirmation and there it was. So good. More than one way to skin a cat, as I always say.
Try to make it as easy as possible for folks, but technology is always,
We're able to put it in the reminder, just put the link in the reminder. That would be very helpful.
Yeah. Also, I think there's always like a reason that doesn't work, I guess. Like you have to re-register basically, but I could do that and then people could just re-register and they'd have the link immediately.
I had to do
one of those annoying things, but
annoying things. All right. Well, thank you just the same for everything you do.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Talk to you all soon. Bye.
Bye.